welcome to DCF Investigations. Imagine a stretch of asphalt that cuts through the heart of the wilderness, a ribbon of gray winding through 720 kilometers of dense pine forests, towering mountains, and isolated valleys. To the uninitiated, Highway 16 in British Columbia, Canada, is a scenic route connecting the interior city of Prince George to the coastal town of Prince Rupert. It is a place of breathtaking natural beauty, where the mist clings to the evergreens and the silence of the north is broken only by the roar of logging trucks and the howl of the wind. But to the locals, and especially to the indigenous communities that have lived on this land for millennia, this road is not known for its scenery. It is known by a name that chills the blood and breaks the heart. It is the Highway of Tears. For over half a century, this desolate corridor has served as a hunting ground. It is a place where young women, many of them indigenous, have vanished into the mist or have been found discarded like refuse in the ditches and the brush. The official police task force lists 18 victims, but community leaders, families, and activists believe the true number could be 40, 50, or perhaps even higher. Tonight, we are going to walk this lonely road together. We are going to examine the history, the victims, the suspects, and the systemic failures that allowed a serial predator, or perhaps a collection of them, to operate with impunity for decades. We will look at the forensic challenges of the past, the breakthroughs of the present, and the haunting questions that remain unanswered. This is not just a story about murder. It is a story about geography, about poverty, about racism, and about a silence that screams. To understand the Highway of Tears, you must first understand the environment. We are talking about northern British Columbia, a region that is vast and sparsely populated. The weather here can be unforgiving, with winters that bring deep snow and biting cold, and summers where the sun barely sets. Between the scattered towns and First Nations reserves, there are long, empty stretches of road where cellular service is non-existent, and the nearest police station might be hours away. In this isolation, hitchhiking became not just a method of travel, but a necessity. For decades, public transportation was scarce, unreliable, or entirely absent. Families living below the poverty line, often without vehicles, had no other way to get to work, to visit doctors, or to see friends in neighboring towns. They stood on the shoulder of Highway 16, thumbs out, trusting that the next car would offer a ride, not a death sentence. The timeline of terror begins, officially, in the late 1960s, though many elders believe it started even earlier. In 1969, 26-year-old Gloria Moody, a mother of two and a member of the Bella Coola First Nation, had traveled to Williams Lake for a medical appointment. She was last seen leaving a bar on October 25th. The next day, her body was found in the bush by a cattle trail. She had been beaten and sexually assaulted. Her murder remains unsolved, setting a grim precedent for what was to come. Just a year later, in 1970, Micheline Pare, a young woman of 18, was hitchhiking from Hudson's Hope to Fort St. John. Two women picked her up and dropped her off at the gates of the Peace River Power Project. She was never seen alive again. Her body was discovered months later, miles away near Hudson's Hope. The sheer distance between where she was last seen and where she was found suggested a perpetrator who was mobile, comfortable with the roads, and capable of holding a victim for a period of time. As we move into the 1970s, the disappearances accelerated. creating a pattern that police were slow to recognize. In October 1973, Gail Ways, a 19-year-old from Clearwater, was hitchhiking to Kamloops for work. She never arrived. Her remains were found in a gravel pit months later. Less than a month after Gail vanished, 19-year-old Pamela Darlington was last seen hitchhiking to a local bar in Kamloops. Her body was found the next day in a park near the river. The proximity of these cases, both geographically and temporally, should have triggered a massive alarm. Yet, the dots were not connected. Investigation techniques in the 1970s were primitive compared to today. There was no DNA profiling, no centralized databases, and communication between different RCMP detachments was often reliant on paper files and phone calls. A killer could strike in one jurisdiction and move to another without anyone realizing the crimes were linked. The year 1974 brought one of the most significant cases in the history of the highway, one that would eventually crack open a cold case decades later. 16-year-old Colleen MacMillen left her family home in Lac La Hache to hitchhike to a friend's house. She vanished. Her body was found a month later on a logging road off Highway 97, a major connector to Highway 16. The forensic evidence collected at the time was limited, but investigators did preserve the clothing she was wearing. This act of preservation would prove to be the key to unlocking a mystery 40 years later. But at the time, her family was left with only grief and unanswered questions. As the years turned into decades, the list of names grew longer. A tragic roll call of potential and life cut short. In 1989, the disappearance of Alberta Williams brought the issue closer to the forefront of the Indigenous community's consciousness. Alberta was 24 years old. She had been working at a cannery in Prince Rupert. On the night of August 25th, she went to a local pub with friends. She told them she was going to hitchhike to her sister's place. She never made it. Her body was found weeks later, 37 kilometers east of Prince Rupert. The investigation into her death was fraught with rumors and whispers. Years later, a podcast investigation would reveal that the police may have had a prime suspect early on, a man from her inner circle, but insufficient evidence prevented an arrest. Her case highlighted the complexities of investigating crimes within tight-knit communities where fear and silence can obstruct justice. The 1990s saw a terrifying spike in activity. In 1994 alone, 3 teenage girls were murdered. Ramona Wilson, 16 years old, disappeared from Smithers on her way to a graduation party. Her remains were found nearly a year later near the Smithers airport. Roxanne Thiara, 15 years old, vanished from Prince George. Her body was found in the bush off Highway 16. Alicia Germain, also 15, was found murdered near an elementary school in Prince George. The proximity of these ages, the locations, and the victim profiles suggested a predator who was specifically targeting young Indigenous girls. The fear in the communities along the highway was palpable. Parents were terrified to let their children out of their sight. Yet the necessity of travel remained. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of these cases is the disparity in media coverage and police attention. For decades, Indigenous families argued that their daughters, sisters, and mothers were being treated as less than human. When an Indigenous woman went missing, the response was often slow. Police frequently labeled the victims as runaways or implied that their lifestyle choices led to their demise. This concept of lifestyle was a catch-all term used to dismiss victims who hitchhiked or who may have struggled with substance abuse or poverty. It was a systemic failure that allowed killers to operate in the shadows of societal indifference. This disparity became glaringly obvious in 2002 with the disappearance of Nicole Hoare. Nicole was 25 years old, a tree planter from Red Deer, Alberta. She was Caucasian. She was last seen hitchhiking near a gas station west of Prince George. When Nicole went missing, the reaction was immediate and massive. Search and rescue teams scoured the woods, posters went up across the province, and the media descended on the region. The resources poured into the search for Nicole Hoare were unprecedented compared to the cases of the Indigenous women who had vanished from the same stretch of road. While Nicole's family deserved every ounce of support, the contrast was a bitter pill for the families of victims like Lana Derrick, who had vanished from a gas station in 1995, or Tamara Chipman, who disappeared in 2005. It highlighted a phenomenon known as missing white woman syndrome, where media and law enforcement prioritize the cases of white, middle-class victims over those from marginalized communities. The outcry over this inequality, combined with the sheer number of unsolved cases, finally forced the RCMP to act. In 2005, the RCMP formed Project EPANA. The task force's goal was to review the unsolved murders and disappearances along Highway 16, as well as Highways 97 and 5. To be included in the EPANA list, a case had to meet specific criteria. The victim had to be female, involved in a high-risk activity like hitchhiking or the sex trade, and the incident had to have occurred within a specific geographic range. Originally, the list contained 9 names. It quickly expanded to 18. This list of 18 is the official number often cited, but it is a number that is heavily contested. Many families have loved ones who vanished under slightly different circumstances or outside the strict geographic boundaries, and they feel their cases have been ignored. Project EPANA was a massive undertaking. Investigators reviewed thousands of files, interviewed hundreds of witnesses, and re-examined forensic evidence using modern technology. They were looking for a serial killer, but what they began to realize was that the reality was likely far more complex. The Highway of Tears was not the playground of a single monster. It was a corridor of opportunity for multiple predators over different decades. This theory was confirmed in 2012, with a major breakthrough in the case of Colleen MacMillen, the 16-year-old killed in 1974. Advances in DNA technology allowed scientists to extract a profile from the clothing preserved by investigators nearly 40 years earlier. They ran the profile through Interpol's database and got a hit. The DNA belonged to a man named Bobby Jack Fowler. Bobby Jack Fowler was an American transient construction worker and a violent sexual predator. He had traveled extensively throughout North America in old beat-up cars, picking up odd jobs and, it seems, victims. Fowler had a history of violence. In 1995, he was arrested in Oregon for kidnapping and attempting to rape a woman who had leapt from a second-story window to escape him. He was convicted and died in an Oregon prison in 2006, 6 years before the DNA match linked him to Colleen MacMillen. When police looked into Fowler's movements, they found he had worked for a roofing company in Prince George in 1974, the exact time Colleen disappeared. They also suspected him in the murders of Gail Ways and Pamela Darlington, given the similarities in the crimes and the timing. Fowler was a man who drifted, a man who hated women, and a man who knew how to use the remote highways to his advantage. Investigators believe he may have been responsible for many other murders across Canada and the United States. But because he was dead, he could never be interrogated or brought to trial. The discovery of Fowler proved that at least one serial killer had hunted on the highway, but he could not account for the victims in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. He was locked up or dead during those times. This brings us to the chilling realization that there have been other killers. In 2010, a young RCMP officer in Van der Hoof, a town along the highway, pulled over a pickup truck late at night. The driver was a 20-year-old man named Cody Legebokoff. The officer noticed blood on Legebokoff's shirt and saw that he was acting strangely. A search of the area revealed the body of 15-year-old Lauren Leslie, a legally blind girl whom Legebokoff had met online and lured to the area. The arrest of Cody Legebokoff shocked the nation. He did not fit the profile of a drifter like Fowler. He was young, he grew up in the area, and he was known as a popular country boy who loved snowboarding and hockey. Yet, further investigation linked him to 3 other murders: Jill Stukrenko, Cynthia Moss, and Natasha Montgomery. Legebokoff was convicted of 4 counts of first-degree murder in 2014. He was one of Canada's youngest serial killers. His crimes proved that the danger on the highway of tears did not always come from passing strangers. Sometimes it came from within the community itself. But Fowler and Legebokoff do not explain all the disappearances. There are gaps in the timeline, decades where women vanished without a trace, and neither of these men could have been responsible. This has led to extensive profiling of other potential suspects. One such name is Gary Taylor Handlin, who was charged in 2014 with the murder of Monica Jack, a 12-year-old girl who vanished while riding her bike on Highway 5 in 1978. Though Highway 5 is technically separate, it connects to the same network of danger. Handlin was caught during a sophisticated Mr. Big sting operation, where undercover officers posed as criminals to elicit a confession. We must also consider the truckers. The highway is a main artery for the logging and transport industry. Thousands of trucks pass through every week. While the vast majority of truckers are decent, hard-working people, the lifestyle of long-haul trucking offers a unique cover for a predator. A trucker can pick up a victim in one jurisdiction, commit a crime in another, and be hundreds of miles away by the time a body is found. They have a legitimate reason to be on the road at all hours, and their vehicles are essentially mobile homes where evidence can be concealed. There have been multiple investigations into potential serial killer truckers operating in North America, but linking specific trucks to specific times on the Highway of Tears decades ago is a forensic nightmare. Then there are the conspiracy theories. When justice is absent for so long, the human mind seeks patterns, often leading to dark places. One persistent theory within the local communities involves the idea of organized trafficking rings. The theory suggests that the women aren't just being killed, but are being taken, trafficked to other cities or countries. While there is no concrete evidence of a large-scale organized trafficking ring specifically targeting the highway for this purpose, the vulnerability of the victims makes them prime targets for localized exploitation. Another, more disturbing theory involves the police themselves. Given the historical tension between the RCMP and Indigenous communities, and the perceived lack of effort in the early investigations, Some locals believe that officers may have been involved, or at least complicit in covering up crimes. There have been allegations of police brutality and sexual harassment against Indigenous women in the region, which fuels these suspicions. While there is no definitive proof linking a police officer to the murders, the mistrust is a tangible barrier to the investigation. Witnesses are less likely to come forward if they do not trust the authorities. We must also dive deeper into the forensic challenges that have plagued this investigation. In the wet, dense forests of British Columbia, nature is an enemy to evidence. A body left in the summer can be skeletonized by scavengers and decomposition in a matter of weeks. Rain washes away DNA. Snow conceals remains until the spring thaw, by which time valuable clues are lost. In many cases, only partial remains or scattered bones have been found, making it impossible to determine a cause of death or recover assailant DNA. This environmental factor cannot be overstated. It is a landscape that keeps its secrets. Let's talk about the specific case of Maddy Scott to understand the modern context. Madison, known as Maddy, was 20 years old when she disappeared in May 2011. She'd gone to a party at Hogsback Lake, a popular camping spot near Vanderhoof. She was a vibrant young woman, deeply loved by her family. When the party wound down, she decided to stay overnight in her tent. Everyone else left. By morning, she was gone. Her truck was there. Her tent was flattened. Her purse and keys were inside. But Maddy had vanished. For 12 years, her family led an exhaustive campaign to find her. Billboards with her face became a fixture on the highway. Then, in May 2023, a grim discovery was made. Madison's remains were found on a rural property near Vanderhoof. While the discovery brought a tragic form of closure regarding her whereabouts, it opened new wounds and new questions. The property where she was found was being searched in relation to another man. Yet, as of now, the full story of what happened to Maddy Scott remains under tight police seal as the investigation proceeds. Her case serves as a brutal reminder that this is not ancient history. The danger persists. The Highway of Tears is also a story of resilience. The families of the victims have refused to let their loved ones be forgotten. They have organized annual memorial walks, walking the length of the highway to raise awareness. They have erected totem poles and red dress installations along the roadside, haunting symbols of the women who are no longer there. The red dress movement has become a powerful visual representation of the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls crisis across Canada, with the Highway of Tears as its epicenter. In 2006, a symposium was held in Prince George to address the issue. It produced a report with 33 recommendations, including improved public transportation, better cell coverage, and increased victim support services. For years, these recommendations largely gathered dust. It wasn't until fairly recently that a publicly funded bus service was finally implemented along the highway, offering a safer alternative to hitchhiking. But for many, it was too little, too late. The Greyhound bus service, a lifeline for many, ceased operations in Western Canada in 2018, creating a new transportation vacuum that the government scrambled to fill. So, where does the investigation stand today? Project EPANA is still technically active, but the flow of information has slowed. The RCMP continues to receive tips and advancements in genetic genealogy, the same science that caught the Golden State Killer, offer a glimmer of hope for the older cold cases. If DNA exists from the crime scenes of the 70s and 80s, it is possible that new familial matches could identify more killers. However, for many cases where no DNA was recovered, the only hope lies in a confession, a deathbed admission from a perpetrator, or a tip from a family member who has harbored a dark secret for decades. It is crucial to recognize that the term Highway of Tears is not just a geographic descriptor. It is a symbol of a systemic wound. It represents the intersection of colonial history, displacement, and violence against women. The victims were daughters, mothers, sisters, and friends. They were women like Alberta Williams, who loved her family and had a spark that lit up a room. They were girls like Ramona Wilson, who had dreams of the future. They were not just files in a police box. As we look at the legacy of these crimes, we have to ask ourselves, why does it continue? The answer is uncomfortable. It continues because the conditions that created the highway's reputation, poverty, isolation, and systemic racism, have not been fully dismantled. Predators are opportunistic. They hunt where the vulnerable are forced to expose themselves to danger. As long as young women are forced to stand on the side of a frozen highway to get home, the risk remains. There is also the haunting possibility that some of the killers are still out there, living normal lives. They might be retired grandfathers now, their dark pasts hidden behind a facade of normalcy. They drive past the billboards, past the red dresses swaying in the wind, and they remember. We have traversed the history, the geography, and the tragedy of Highway 16. We have looked into the eyes of the monsters like Bobby Jack Fowler and Cody Legebokoff, and we have honored the memories of the women they took. But the story of the Highway of Tears is an open book with many missing pages. This brings us to the end of our journey for tonight, but the investigation never truly closes. The wind still blows through the pines of British Columbia, and the road still stretches out into the unknown. This is DCF Investigations. We dig until we find the truth, no matter how deep it is buried. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you believe the disappearances are the work of a network of killers communicating with one another? Or is the highway simply a crime of opportunity for unrelated predators? And most importantly, do you think the advancements in genetic genealogy will finally solve the cases from the 1970s? Or are those secrets lost to the wilderness forever? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Stay safe and keep watching the shadows.